He stole fire from the gods, and for that he was condemned to suffer for all eternity, not for destroying cities, not for killing innocents, not for trying to rule Olympus, but for giving humanity the one thing that could truly make it free. Prometheus did what no one else dared to do. He defied Zeus, outwitted the king of the gods, and gave mankind the power to step out of darkness. But that gift came at a cost, because fire was never just a flame. It was knowledge, skill, protection, progress. It was the beginning of everything that would allow human beings to stop merely surviving and start changing the world. And that is exactly what enraged Zeus. To the king of the gods, giving that kind of power to humanity was an unforgivable offense. And Prometheus's punishment would be so brutal that it would echo through eternity. But here's the real question. Was Prometheus the hero who saved humanity, or the rebel who opened the door to even greater suffering? Today, you're going to discover why Prometheus defied Olympus, gave fire to mankind, and paid a price no hero would ever dare to pay. To understand just how far Prometheus went in challenging Zeus, we need to go back a bit, because this story begins long before the theft of fire. Before Zeus ruled Olympus with absolute authority, the world was dominated by beings even older and more powerful, the Titans. The Titans were primordial forces of nature itself. They represented the fundamental aspects of the universe: time, sky, earth, memory, light. Among them were massive, feared, and immensely powerful figures. Prometheus was born from that ancient generation. But Prometheus was never an ordinary Titan. While many of his kind were known for brute strength or unchecked ambition, Prometheus was remembered for something else: his intelligence. His very name says it all. Prometheus means the one who thinks ahead, someone able to foresee consequences, weigh risks, and see paths others simply could not. His brother Prometheus was the opposite. His name means the one who thinks afterward. He acts first and reflects later. That contrast between the two brothers already hinted at the role Prometheus would play in the story of humankind. When Zeus led the great war against the Titans to seize control of the universe, Prometheus made a strategic choice. Instead of fighting against the future king of the gods, he sided with Zeus. It was a calculated move. Prometheus knew the age of the Titans was coming to an end. Because of that decision, he was not destroyed when the Titans were defeated. While many were cast into the depths of Tartarus, Prometheus remained free, walking among the gods of the new world ruled by Zeus. But the relationship between the two was never truly peaceful. Zeus stood for order, control, and absolute authority. To him, every being in the universe had to know its place and respect the limits set by the gods. Prometheus saw the world differently. He noticed something Zeus did not seem to value: human beings. Fragile, vulnerable, exposed to cold, hunger, and the dangers of nature, humans seemed insignificant compared to the greatness of the gods. But Prometheus saw something else in them. He saw curiosity, imagination, and a quiet capacity to grow. And this is where the central idea of the story begins. When myths speak of the fire stolen by Prometheus, they are not talking only about a flame to warm the body. Fire represents something much greater: knowledge, craftsmanship, protection, creation, independence. Fire is the first step that allows human beings to stop merely surviving and start transforming the world around them. That is why the story of Prometheus is not just about a rebellious titan. It is about forbidden knowledge, power, divine punishment, and the cost of challenging those who control the rules of the universe. In this video, we're diving into one of the most fascinating stories in Greek mythology: the journey of Prometheus, the titan who dared to stand against Zeus in order to give humanity what the gods wanted to keep forbidden. But there is one important detail in this story. Giving fire to mankind was not just a gift, it was a direct challenge to the power of the gods. And to understand why Prometheus made such a dangerous decision, we need to look at the moment humanity first began to exist. When humanity had not yet found its place in the world, Zeus gave Prometheus and Prometheus a decisive task: to distribute to the creatures of creation whatever each one would need to survive. Prometheus, who always acted before thinking, asked to handle the task alone, and Prometheus let him. So Prometheus began handing out nature's gifts. To some he gave strength, to others speed, to some sharp claws. Animal after animal he distributed abilities, defenses, and advantages. But when he finished, he realized he had made a massive mistake. He had given everything to the animals and forgotten the humans. And so the human being was left without natural defenses. No speed, no armor, no claws, no protection from the cold, no obvious advantage against nature. Fragile, exposed, and dependent, humanity seemed like the most vulnerable creature of all. That was when Prometheus decided to act. According to the myth, he knelt before the earth, took clay in his hands, and began shaping the first human beings. With patience and purpose, he gave form to what did not yet exist: head, arms, legs, face, body. Not as someone merely making another creature, but as someone who understood he was bringing into being something that could become far more than it appeared. But shaping clay was not enough. That form was still only matter without movement, without awareness, without presence. So Prometheus gave life to his creation, and along with that life, he gave humans something that even the strength of animals could not replace: hope and curiosity. Hope to keep going, even in weakness. Curiosity to look at the world and want to understand it. That made humans unique. They were not born complete. They were born unfinished. But at the same time, they were born open to the possibility of transformation. Like an artist looking at his work, Prometheus saw in human beings an imperfect reflection of divinity itself. There was something unfinished in them, but also something full of promise, something that had not yet fully awakened. But one essential piece was still missing. There was something humans did not have, something that separated them from the gods: fire. Without fire, mankind would remain trapped by fear of the night, the cold, hunger, and helplessness in the face of the world. They could not warm themselves, cook, illuminate, forge, or create. They would remain small, dependent, and limited. And that was no accident. Zeus had forbidden fire to mortals precisely to keep them weak. As long as humanity lacked access to that power, it would never stop depending on the order imposed by the gods. But Prometheus began to question all of this, because as he looked at what he had created, one question kept growing inside him. What is the point of creating something if you never give it the power to grow? And at that moment, challenging the power of heaven became inevitable. Prometheus was different from the other titans. He was not impulsive or brutal. He was observant, intelligent, and visionary. While others saw only the present, Prometheus could see what might still be possible, and that is exactly why he chose humanity. Where Zeus saw weak and insignificant creatures, Prometheus saw potential. He saw a spark of creation, growth, and change. He saw in human beings something no one else could see. Prometheus was like the person who looks at someone everyone else has written off and still manages to see a huge future there. But that way of thinking placed Prometheus directly opposite Zeus, because to Zeus humans were meant to remain limited. To Prometheus, they were capable of rising, and the tension between the two did not begin with fire. It began earlier, the moment Prometheus showed that even the king of the gods could be challenged. The first major conflict between Prometheus and Zeus happened even before the theft of fire. At one point, gods and humans needed to decide how offerings to the gods would be made. Prometheus prepared a test. He took an ox and divided it into two parts. In one pile, he placed the bones of the animal, but covered them with a beautiful layer of white fat, making that portion look more appealing. In the other, he placed the real meat, but hid it beneath a less attractive appearance. Then he asked Zeus to choose which part would belong to the gods. Zeus chose the prettier portion. But when he opened the offering, he realized he had been left with nothing but bones. The better part had gone to humanity. More than a simple trick, it was a public humiliation. Prometheus did not challenge Zeus with strength. He challenged him with intelligence, and to the king of the gods that was even worse. At that moment, Zeus realized that Prometheus was not just helping humanity, he was weakening divine authority. And when Zeus decided to retaliate, he struck at exactly what Prometheus valued most: humanity. After the sacrifice deception, Zeus understood that Prometheus was not merely sympathetic to humans, he was actively trying to empower them, and that is exactly why Zeus chose to target the most important thing of all, fire. In the mind of the king of the gods, mortals should never have access to that power. Fire did not merely warm the body, it completely changed the human condition. With fire, people could cook food, protect themselves from the cold, drive away animals, light the darkness, work metal, build tools, and begin to master what they had once only endured. In other words, fire was not just a flame. It was the line between living at the mercy of the world and beginning to transform it. That is why Zeus forbade humans from having it. Without fire, they would remain fragile, dependent, and limited. They would stay beneath the gods, without the strength to grow too much and without the ability to threaten the order imposed by Olympus. But Prometheus saw all of this differently. To him, denying fire to humanity was preventing his creation from becoming what it had the potential to be. It was keeping mankind trapped in weakness, not because it was incapable, but because someone more powerful was afraid of what humans might do if they received the right tool. And so Prometheus made the decision that would change everything. He decided to ascend to the divine realm and steal the sacred fire. This is the great turning point of the myth, because here Prometheus stops merely questioning Zeus and begins acting directly against his will. It was no longer a battle of ideas or a symbolic act like the sacrifice episode. Now it was an open challenge to the power of the king of Olympus. According to mythic tradition, Prometheus went to the place where the divine flame burned and took a spark from it. To carry it away unnoticed, he hid the fire inside a hollow fennel stalk, a long, lightweight plant capable of transporting the ember without letting it die out. It is a simple image but an incredibly powerful one, because it shows that Prometheus did not defeat Zeus with force. He prevailed through courage, intelligence, and resolve. And when he comes down with that spark and gives it to humanity, what he is offering is not just warmth for a campfire. He is handing over the first great tool of civilization. With fire, humanity no longer depends only on what nature provides ready-made. Now it can alter, produce, protect, and build. Food can be prepared, metal can be shaped, night no longer has to remain completely dark, cold no longer has to be endured without resistance. Fire becomes a symbol of skill, reason, invention, and independence. That is why this moment is so important in Greek mythology. Prometheus did not give humanity only a flame. He gave human beings the possibility of growth, the possibility of ceasing to be just one fragile species among many, and beginning to build a destiny of their own. But in the world of the gods, giving power to mortals was an unforgivable act, and Zeus would not see this theft as simple disobedience. He would see it as a threat, because from that moment on, humanity was no longer entirely in the hands of Olympus, and forbidden power, once finally seized, almost always comes with punishment. When Zeus discovered that Prometheus had stolen fire and given that power to humanity, his reaction was immediate. To the king of the gods, this was not merely disobedience, it was a threat to the order of the world. If human beings began gaining too much independence, they might stop depending on the gods. They could grow, evolve, and perhaps one day even question divine authority itself. Zeus needed to respond, but instead of attacking humanity directly, he chose to do something far more calculated. Zeus ordered that a new figure be created among mortals, a woman, but not an ordinary woman. Each god of Olympus contributed to her creation. Hephaestus shaped her body with divine skill. Aphrodite gave her irresistible beauty. Athena taught her arts and abilities. Hermes granted her persuasion and cunning. Thus Pandora was born. Her name means something close to the one gifted with everything. Pandora was sent to humanity as a gift, but that gift carried a trap. Along with her came a container, often called a box, though in older versions it was actually a jar, holding something that no one was supposed to open. Curiosity, however, was part of the very nature the gods had placed in her, and at some point Pandora opened it. The instant the lid was lifted, everything changed. Out poured pain, disease, exhaustion, suffering, sorrow, envy, fear, and all the evils that had never before existed among humankind. These forces spread rapidly through the human world. Life, once simpler, now became filled with hardship, struggle, and suffering. When Pandora tried to close the container again, only one thing remained inside: hope. That detail is one of the most symbolic parts of the entire myth, because it means that even after all the evils of the world were unleashed, one thing still remained with humanity: the ability to keep trying, keep believing, and keep moving forward. But Zeus's message was clear. If Prometheus had given power to humanity, Zeus would answer by adding weight to human existence. Progress would not come without consequences. And here a troubling question emerges inside the story. Did Prometheus save humanity, or simply open the door to a deeper kind of suffering? Because while humans were learning to use fire to grow and create, Zeus was preparing something even more direct for the one who had defied Olympus. And Prometheus's punishment would be worse than any pain humanity had ever known. Zeus did not forget what Prometheus had done. Stealing fire from Olympus and giving it to humanity was, to the king of the gods, a direct affront to his authority. It was not merely disobedience, it was a challenge to divine power itself. And Zeus needed to respond in a way that no one could ignore. Prometheus was captured and taken to a remote region in the rocky Caucasus Mountains. There, by Zeus's command, he was chained to a massive stone. But the punishment did not end there. Every day, a giant eagle, sent by Zeus, descended from the heavens and devoured Prometheus's liver. The pain was unbearable. And when night came, something even more cruel happened. His liver regenerated. Overnight, Prometheus's body repaired itself, only so that the eagle could return the next day and the torment could begin again. This cycle did not last days, or months, or years. It was eternal. Prometheus's punishment was not only punishment, it was a message. Zeus wanted to show that no one could challenge the power of the gods without paying a terrible price. Prometheus's pain was meant to serve as an example to any being who dared cross the limits imposed by Olympus. But there is one detail that makes this story even more powerful. Prometheus was not punished for making a mistake. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that defying Zeus would have consequences. He knew stealing fire meant crossing a line the gods did not allow anyone to cross, and still he chose to do it. And maybe that is exactly what enraged Zeus most of all. Prometheus suffers, but he does not repent. He continues to believe that giving fire to humanity was the right decision. His body is chained to the rock, but the flame he gave to humanity remains alive, and that flame could never be taken back. Prometheus's suffering seemed endless. Day after day, year after year, he remained chained to the rock, while the eagle returned to repeat the same torment. Zeus's punishment was clear: turn Prometheus's pain into an eternal example that defying the power of the gods would bring consequences. But stories in Greek mythology rarely end in suffering alone. Long afterward, a hero would pass through that place. His name was Hercules. Hercules was already famous for his extraordinary strength, and for facing trials no ordinary man could endure. During one of his journeys, he reached the mountains where Prometheus was imprisoned. There he found the Titan chained to the stone, trapped in that endless cycle of agony. When the eagle returned to continue the punishment, Hercules made a choice. With a perfectly aimed arrow, he struck the creature and killed it. For the first time in countless years, Prometheus's torment came to an end. Hercules then freed the Titan from his chains, breaking the punishment Zeus had imposed. But the most important part of this story is not simply Prometheus's release, because even while he was bound to the rock, something had already escaped the control of the gods: fire. The flame Prometheus gave to humanity could never be taken away. Human beings kept using fire to learn, build, invent, and transform the world around them. Over time, Prometheus came to represent far more than a figure in mythology. He became a symbol of the courage to question limits, the pursuit of knowledge, and the boldness to teach what others want to keep hidden. In art, science, philosophy, and even modern literature, Prometheus appears as the figure who challenges power in order to give human beings the ability to think, create, and evolve. His body may have been chained, but the idea he represented never was. Because at its core, Prometheus came to symbolize something that lives inside humanity itself: the desire to learn, to discover, to push beyond limits, to pursue knowledge even when it demands courage. And that is exactly why the story of Prometheus remains so powerful to this day. In the end, the story of Prometheus is not just about a titan chained to a rock or about fire stolen from the heavens. It is about something much deeper. It is about the symbolic origin of what makes us human, the ability to learn, create, challenge limits, and transform the world around us. When Prometheus gave fire to humanity, he was not merely handing over a tool. He was giving independence. He was opening the path for human beings to stop being fragile creatures struggling only to survive, and start building civilizations, knowledge, and progress. But this story also shows something important. Knowledge always comes with a price. Progress almost always creates conflict. And every time someone challenges structures of power in order to expand the limits of what is possible, consequences follow. That is why Prometheus is such a fascinating figure. He was at the same time a savior and an agent of disruption, humanity's benefactor, and the one who provoked the wrath of the gods. Maybe that very ambiguity is what keeps this myth so relevant, because deep down, Prometheus represents the boldest side of humanity itself. The part of us that wants to discover, question, and go beyond what we were told was allowed. And at the end of this story, one question still echoes today: how far is it worth going to give power to humanity? Now, I want to hear your opinion. Was Prometheus a hero who set humanity free, a rebel who defied the gods, or a martyr who paid the price of knowledge? Tell me in the comments what you think. And if you enjoy mythology explained in a way that's deep but easy to understand, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here we dive into the most fascinating myths to uncover what they still reveal about the world we live in today.